there's more actually unfolding on this, as 98 new Patriotic Party members of Parliament have actually resolved to boycott the budget presentation and all finance ministry-related businesses should the president refuse to sack the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, immediately. This new number is actually an increase from the previous 80 NPP MPs who had earlier demanded the removal of the finance minister. Well, we can listen to Member of Parliament for Asante Akim North, Andy Piakubi, who doubles as spokesperson of this group of NPP MPs calling for the dismissal of Ken Ofori-Atta.
Okay. We've gone back to sack him now, and therefore we expect that some action be taken in respect of relieving him of his position. We have also told the president that if he is not relieved of his position, we shall not cooperate or work with him or participate in anything that he brings to the to Parliament. And that position is where we are right now.
So that last bit, when you say anything that he brings, that is anything that is brought in the name of the executive president? Under the hand of the finance minister. We will not participate. Okay. Because as far as we are concerned, we are not going to do business with him. And if we are not going to do business with him, he does not participate in any process from the presidency to the House. We will not participate in deliberations on it. Okay. I asked this to get clarity. So if another minister comes to the floor, say education minister, energy minister, although they are coming on the authority of the president, you will hear them, you will do business with them.
We will so do, because we are not saying that we will do president business, but we will not do president business through Mr. Ofori-Atta. So if anybody else comes with president business to do, we will participate.
And that's the latest on what's likely to happen if Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is not dismissed immediately. It's part of the demands by now 98, previously 80 NPP MPs making that demand. So what's the implication for the governance process? And of course, as we await the budget presentation somewhere next week, let me bring in now Executive Director for the Parliamentary Network Africa, Samuel Bing, is joining us via Zoom. Thank you, sir, for your time here on The Pulse. 98 NPP MPs, and of course, if you're adding that to the entire block of minority members, first of all, asking for the vote of censure, it appears that there's sufficient grounds for which the finance minister could be pushed out.
Well, on the bit about the push, and thanks for having me, Blessed. On the bit about the push, we have also heard some of these members of parliament of the majority side indicate that whereas they want the minister out, they may not necessarily ask that through the vote of censure process that is taking place. So we'll have to wait to see how that pans out. But on the bit about the budget, you know, having 98 members of the minority side say they would boycott the process if Mr. Ofori-Atta does the presentation. And we have the members of the minority side who have also made themselves very clear that, you know, Mr. Ofori-Atta has no business being finance minister. And fortunately, having a constitution that tells us about the fact that, you know, budgets are presented on the authority of His Excellency the President by a minister, we know that it doesn't have to take Mr. Ofori-Atta to present the budget. And His Excellency the President will be doing his tenure a lot of good if he heeds to some of these calls. You know, it will be quite embarrassing to have 98 of your members of parliament from your party, you know, boycott a presentation of a budget. It will take away the shine. It will take away whatever communication you wanted to put across to make the people of Ghana know that you are working towards alleviating our plight. And that will be a very needless, you know, situation for the president to put himself and his government through.
Implications would be for, first of all, the parliamentary processes. If you have 98 of the governing NPP MPs boycott, we're not too sure what the leadership of the minority side may intend to do. What's going to be the direct implication as to possibly the adoption or admission of the budget and financial policy statement even in the House?
Recall that the members of parliament who held the press conference did not indicate that they were only going to boycott the budget presentation. They said that they would boycott whichever process that is led by Mr. Ofori-Atta, and we know what challenges even budget adoption went through last year, when Mr. Ofori-Atta had the blessing of his entire party caucus in parliament. So it will be needless, like I said from the very beginning, for us to even get there in insisting that Mr. Ofori-Atta must be the one, doing the presentation. Recall that in 2021, when this government took office for the second term, and there were challenges with Mr. Ofori-Atta's, health and his vetting and all of that. There were arrangements that still allowed the finance ministry to move on, and so again, I really would be very surprised and perhaps wonder what kind of advice His Excellency the President gets from his advisors if he does not heed these calls, which are already in the open. It would have been a different case if these people were talking about it in private, murmuring about it on the corridors of parliament. But they've been bold. They've come out. They said, no, we don't want him presenting. Please, Mr. President would have to save us that particular trouble.
How about the issue of prejudice? Of course, the Speaker of Parliament says we need to give a fair hearing to the Finance Minister himself. That parliamentary process is currently underway. Barely a day ago, we know that on Friday, the Finance Minister says he will be before the 8-member ad hoc committee just to present his side of the story. Why can't we, of course, first of all, hear from the Finance Minister, and then these 98 NPP MPs could make their decision? Don't you feel that they're setting double standards here?
Well, recall that the financial policy of government, or the budget that is presented in Parliament, is a whole process. It's not a day's event. So the budget presentation day is not, a conclusion of all of the issues around the process. There is the pre-presentation phase, which has been going on for a while, where the whole document gets developed, where the economic policies of government and all of that gets put in place. Certainly, he has been a part of the entire process. And I am saying that if it would take him not being the one to stand in at the table of Parliament, to make that reading, that ceremonial presentation, which really does not count for much, and forgive me for using does not count for much, but I mean it in the context of the discussion, because the presentation, the development of the document and all of that is where the crux of the matter is. If having that would actually save the government the embarrassment, would save Ghanaians the challenge of not having a budget completed by the time in which it needs to be completed, then I think that it's only wise that, that will be heeded. Remember that there are times when ministers of state will have to answer questions on the floor of Parliament, will have to address Parliament on one matter or the other. Sometimes they send their deputies. Sometimes their other colleague ministers on the same level present for them. And Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has done this many, many, many times. I think that His Excellency the President, who has the onus to present the budget to Parliament, but a minister does that upon his authority, would respectfully give that particular authority to somebody else, so that we are safe.
Integrity of the 98 NPP MPs is being questioned at this point. First of all, when this whole campaign started, the push to get the Finance Minister out of office, we saw these 80 previously, 80 now 98, accept the position of the leadership. At least it was signed by the majority leader himself, indicating that they've decided to tone down, accept the president's proposition that after the budget presentation, we can't then get into the conversation as to whether or not the finance minister should leave office. So if you indeed agreed in principle at the time that the meeting happened between the MPs and the president, why come out now and change your mind?
Recall that the outcome of that particular meeting was only reported to us in that statement issued by the majority leader. It was a one-pager, I think. It did not have the full details. And remember that it is also possible, and it can be true, that the members of parliament agreed that, yes, Mr. Ofori-Atta should continue to lead the IMF process. He shouldn't be fired as Minister for Finance for now, but they are still holding on to their position that he should not be the one presenting the budget in parliament and leading the process. These two can happen at the same time. And I think we must not lose sight of that. So if that really was their position right from the very beginning, then I really do not see any integrity issues here.
Well, your expectations for Friday, the finance minister says, well, I'm ready to present my side of the story. Day one has been hectic, full of course, the usual banter. And then we see the infiltration of partisanship on that unique co-chaired 8 ad hoc committee. What's your expectation ahead of Friday?
Well, day one was a grilling 6-hour, of course, there was a 1 hour or so break in between, but the entire period that they actually sat was a little over 6 hours. That's a lot of time invested into that particular conversation. And I think that the members of parliament, the 8 of them, I think there are 8 of them who make up the committee, will not want all of their efforts to come to naught in allowing anything to derail the process. Yes, you describe the co-chairing situation as a very unique one, and obviously that certainly sets the committee up for some challenges here and there. I think that's maybe one of the things they also need to consider for Friday, is that they need to speak in conclave to let their co-chair, Mr. K.T. Hammond, the honorable member for Adansia Sokwa, to know that this is live on television. Sometimes the optics, but many times the optics matter, especially when it's around the time when Ghanaians are struggling, Ghanaians are angry.
K.T. Hammond is not behaving enough. That's your view.
Well, he could have done much better, as a co-chair. And of course, the verdict is out there. The people of Ghana have taken to many platforms to criticize, how he discharged himself. If we do not take care, that little bit of his attitude and his approach will take away the shine from 6 hours of hard work that were done by the members of parliament on that particular day. And that is what I think the committee must guard against on Friday and beyond. And beyond Friday, it is my expectation also that this whole issue of having parliamentary committees have conversations, have sit-ins, the sit-ins are telecast, but yet they fail to agree on a final report, and there are issues here and there marring the whole presentation of their report, which takes away the shine from the entire work that they have done. It will not be the case for this particular committee. I'm hoping. All right, and I really hope they are able to prove me, right in this instance.
Indeed, that's what we're looking up to. But I'm grateful that you've been able to join us here on The Pulse. Executive Director for the Parliamentary Network Africa, Sami Obing. Well.